My family kicked me out for wanting to go to college instead of joining the family business, leaving me to survive with help from a stranger. I worked multiple jobs to put myself through MIT and built my own engineering company from nothing. Years later, the same family who abandoned me came crawling back, begging me to help save their failing business. Now I have to decide whether to help the people who threw me away when I needed them most. The rain was coming down hard that October night when I finally worked up the courage to tell my parents I wanted to go to college. I was 14, sitting at our kitchen table with acceptance letters spread out in front of me. MIT, Stanford, Harvard, all offering me full scholarships based on my research project about sustainable energy systems. My father's face turned red when he saw the papers. My mother just stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Behind them, my 3 older brothers looked anywhere but at me, knowing what was coming. College? Dad's voice was barely controlled. You think you're too good for the family business now, Emma? The Castellano construction company had been in our family for 4 generations. Dad had built it from a small operation into one of the most respected construction firms in the state. My brothers had all joined right out of high school, just like Dad expected, just like he expected from me. It's not about being too good, I said, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. It's about following my dreams. I want to be an engineer, Dad. I want to create things that can help people. Help people? He laughed bitterly. You know what helps people? Jobs, housing, infrastructure, real work with your hands, not some fancy degree that fills your head with nonsense. I looked to my mother for support, but she was twisting her wedding ring, something she only did when she was upset. Emma, honey, she said softly, family comes first. It always has in this house. But these are full scholarships, I pressed on desperately. It won't cost you anything. I can study engineering and then maybe I can help modernize the business, bring in new technology. Enough! Dad's fist hit the table so hard the letters jumped. You want to abandon your family for some pipe dream? Fine, but don't expect us to support you when reality comes crashing down. That night changed everything. Over the next few weeks, the house grew colder. My brothers stopped talking to me at dinner. Mom would make my favorite meals, then act like she hadn't done it on purpose. Dad treated me like I was already gone, discussing business plans and family matters as if I wasn't sitting right there. I threw myself into my schoolwork with desperate intensity. I stayed late in the library every day, partly because I was applying to more schools, but mostly because I couldn't bear to go home to the suffocating weight of their disapproval. Mrs. Patterson, my AP physics teacher, noticed something was wrong. She kept me after class one day in late November. Emma, she said gently, I know it's not my place to ask, but are you all right? I wanted to tell her everything, but instead I just shrugged and said I was fine. She studied my face carefully. You know, when I was your age, I wanted to be an astronaut. My father told me I was being ridiculous, that I should focus on getting married like a normal girl. What happened? I asked. I became a physicist instead. Got my PhD from Caltech. Worked for NASA for 15 years. My father came to my graduation and cried during my dissertation defense. He told me afterward that he'd never been more proud, but it had taken him years to understand that being proud of me didn't mean controlling me. Those words carried me through the increasingly difficult weeks that followed. Thanksgiving was forced politeness. Christmas was worse. I got practical gifts while my brothers received tools that marked them as valued family members. New Year's passed without anyone asking about my plans. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in January. I'd been working part-time at the local library to save money and had just gotten home when I found my belongings packed in cardboard boxes on the front porch. The locks had been changed. Mom answered the door when I knocked, her eyes red from crying. I'm sorry, she whispered, but you made your choice. Mom, please! She closed the door in my face. I stood there in the January cold, 16 boxes containing my entire life stacked around me, and realized I was truly alone. The neighbors' curtains twitched, but no one came out to help. This was Dad's neighborhood, and everyone knew better than to cross Tony Castellano. Mrs. Henderson from the library found me there 3 hours later, crying on my own front steps. She was 68, lived alone since her husband died, and had no children of her own. Without asking any questions, she loaded my boxes into her truck and took me home with her. You can stay as long as you need, she said simply, but you'll pull your weight and you'll keep your grades up. I didn't just keep my grades up, I soared. With Mrs. Henderson's quiet support and my determination burning like a flame inside me, I threw myself into my studies with everything I had. I worked at the library after school, helped Mrs. Henderson with her garden and household repairs, and spent every free moment studying or working on scholarship applications. The applications were brutal. Each one required essays about my background, my goals, my challenges. How do you explain to an admissions committee that your family disowned you for wanting an education? How do you turn abandonment into inspiration? I wrote draft after draft, crumpling up pages that were too bitter, too angry, too self-pitying. Mrs. Henderson would find me at her kitchen table at midnight, surrounded by wadded paper and empty coffee cups. Tell them who you are, she said one night, reading over my shoulder, not who they made you become. So I rewrote everything. I wrote about growing up in a family of builders, about learning to see the world as something that could be improved piece by piece. I wrote about watching my father create homes for families and wanting to create something even bigger, solutions to the problems that kept people from having those homes in the first place. I wrote about love and loss and the courage it takes to follow a dream when everyone you care about thinks you're making a mistake. Senior year, I graduated valedictorian with a perfect GPA and 15 college acceptances. I chose MIT for their engineering program, with enough scholarship money to cover everything. Mrs. Henderson cried at my graduation, the only family I had there to see me walk across that stage. The night before I left for college, Mrs. Henderson knocked on my bedroom door. She was holding a small wrapped package. This was my husband's, she said, handing it to me. Inside was a beautiful compass, old and brass and perfectly calibrated. He always said that as long as you know which direction you're headed, you'll never really be lost. College was like stepping into another world. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who understood my passion for creating and building. I dove into mechanical and environmental engineering, specializing in sustainable construction technologies. My professors noticed my drive, how I stayed late in the labs, how I asked questions that showed I was thinking beyond the textbook. But it wasn't easy. While my classmates talked about family dinners and holiday plans, I worked double shifts at the campus bookstore to pay for textbooks and supplies my scholarships didn't cover. While they went home for breaks, I stayed on campus, often the only student in the empty dorms. The loneliness hit hardest during my sophomore year. It was Thanksgiving, and campus was deserted. I was eating a sad turkey sandwich in my dorm room when my phone rang. Unknown number. Emma? The voice was hesitant, nervous. Michael? I couldn't believe it. My brother hadn't spoken to me in almost 3 years. Yeah, it's me. I wanted to call to see how you were doing. I started crying right there on the phone. I'm good, I managed to say. I'm really good. How are you? How's everyone? There was a long pause. We miss you, he said finally. Things haven't been the same since you left. Then why? Dad forbid us from contacting you? He said if we wanted to support your choice, we could leave too. We talked for an hour. He told me about Tommy's new girlfriend, about Marco's promotion to project manager, about Mom's new hobby of collecting recipe books she never used. He told me Dad had been quieter lately, more withdrawn, that he'd stopped talking about expanding the business or taking on bigger projects. I think he regrets it, Michael said quietly, but he's too proud to admit it. And what about you? Do you regret it? Another long pause. I regret not standing up for you. I regret letting him make that choice for all of us. After that, Michael called every few weeks. Always when Dad wasn't around, always brief conversations that felt like stolen moments. He became my lifeline to the family I'd lost, even though each call reminded me of how much I was missing. Dr. Sarah Chen became my mentor junior year. She was brilliant, successful, and had built a career on developing green building technologies. Under her guidance, I started working on research that would eventually become my senior thesis. A revolutionary new concrete mixture that could reduce carbon emissions by 60% while increasing structural strength. You have something special, Emma, Dr. Chen told me one evening as we worked late in the lab. Not just intelligence, though you have plenty of that, but vision. You see possibilities where others see problems. Working on that concrete formula became my obsession. I spent countless hours in the materials lab, testing different combinations of recycled materials, volcanic ash, and bio-based additives. The first 100 attempts failed spectacularly. The 101st showed promise. By attempt 200, I had something revolutionary. The breakthrough came at 2 in the morning on a Tuesday in March. I'd been testing a mixture that incorporated recycled plastic fibers and a new type of limestone substitute when the compression test results came back. Not only was the concrete stronger than traditional mixes, but it actually absorbed carbon dioxide from the air as it cured. I called Dr. Chen immediately, not caring that it was the middle of the night. Are you sure about these numbers? She asked, her voice sharp with excitement. I've run the test 6 times. The results are consistent. Emma, do you understand what this means? This could change the entire construction industry. The discovery led to my first published research paper, co-authored with Dr. Chen. Carbon negative concrete, a sustainable solution for modern construction, appeared in the Journal of Sustainable Materials to immediate acclaim. Suddenly, I wasn't just a college student anymore. I was an innovator with a patent pending and companies calling to learn more about my work. The night before graduation, I sat in my dorm room looking at the job offers spread across my desk. Tesla wanted me for their sustainability team. Google was offering a spot in their green infrastructure division. A dozen consulting firms had reached out. But the letter that made my heart race was from Innovative Structures, Inc., a cutting-edge firm that specialized in sustainable architecture and construction. I chose Innovative Structures and moved to Seattle. The Pacific Northwest suited me. All that rain reminded me of the night when everything changed. I rented a small apartment near Pike Place Market and threw myself into work with the same intensity I'd brought to everything else. My first project was designing the structural systems for a low-income housing development that needed to be both affordable and environmentally sustainable. It was exactly the kind of challenge I lived for, finding creative solutions within tight constraints. I spent months perfecting the design, incorporating my improved concrete formula and developing new techniques for maximizing energy efficiency. The project was a massive success. The buildings came in under budget, exceeded all environmental standards, and provided safe, comfortable homes for 200 families. The local news picked up the story, then national outlets. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know about the young engineer who was revolutionizing sustainable construction. Emma Castellano, the 23-year-old who's changing how we build, ran as a cover story in Engineering Today. The article detailed my journey from disowned daughter to rising star in sustainable construction. It mentioned my family's business, describing how I'd been estranged from her construction dynasty family for pursuing higher education. I wondered if they saw it. I wondered what Dad thought when he read about my success in the same industry he'd spent his life building. Michael never mentioned it during our calls, but I had a feeling the article had made its way to their kitchen table. I was 25 when I decided to start my own company. Green Build Solutions began in the spare bedroom of my apartment with just me and a laptop. My first hire was Marcus, a brilliant structural engineer who'd been laid off from a big firm that prioritized profits over innovation. Then came Sophia, an architect with a passion for community-centered design. Then James, a project manager who could organize chaos into efficiency. Starting the company meant risking everything. I'd saved every penny from my job at Innovative Structures, but it still wasn't enough to cover startup costs, equipment, and salaries. I took out loans that made me sick to think about, worked 18-hour days, and survived on takeout and determination. Our first big break came 6 months in. The city of Portland was looking for a firm to design a new community center that would serve as a model for sustainable public architecture. The building needed to be completely carbon neutral, use recycled and locally sourced materials wherever possible, and incorporate community spaces that would bring the neighborhood together. We were competing against firms with decades of experience and budgets 10 times our size, but we had something they didn't, a revolutionary approach to sustainable construction that could deliver exactly what the city wanted at a fraction of the expected cost. I presented our proposal to the city council on a rainy Thursday morning, my hands shaking as I clicked through slides showing our innovative designs and cost projections. When I finished, the room was silent for what felt like an eternity. Finally, the council chairwoman spoke. Ms. Castellano, this is quite ambitious for such a young company. How can we be sure you can deliver on these promises? I thought about my father's words from all those years ago, about real work with your hands, about building things that last. Because I learned from the best, I said. I come from a family of builders. The difference is I want to build a better future. We got the contract. Within 2 years, we had our first major success. The Portland Community Center was featured in Architectural Digest, won 3 sustainability awards, and became a model that other cities wanted to replicate. We were getting calls from developers across the country, all wanting to incorporate our revolutionary concrete formula and sustainable design principles into their projects. But success came with complications. The bigger we got, the more attention we attracted, including attention from people I'd hoped never to see again. I was standing in our temporary office trailer on a construction site in Oregon, reviewing blueprints with my team, when I heard a familiar voice outside. Emma Castellano? I looked up to see my brother Michael standing at the trailer door, his face uncertain. He looked older than his 29 years, with calloused hands and the beginnings of gray in his dark hair. Behind him stood another man in an expensive suit I didn't recognize. Michael! My voice came out steadier than I felt. What are you doing here? We heard about your company, he said, stepping into the trailer. This is David Morrison from Morrison Development. He's got a proposition for you. Morrison stepped forward with the confidence of a man used to getting what he wanted. Ms. Castellano, I represent several major developers who are interested in your sustainable building techniques. We'd like to discuss a partnership that could make you very wealthy very quickly. I studied his face, then looked at Michael. And you're here because? Michael shifted uncomfortably. Dad sent me. Things have been difficult since you left. The industry is changing. Clients are demanding green certifications, sustainable practices. We're losing contracts because we can't deliver what you can. The irony wasn't lost on me. The family business that had rejected my dreams was now struggling because they didn't have those very dreams. But Morrison's presence suggested this wasn't just about reconciliation. What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Morrison? I asked. We acquire green build solutions. You keep your team, but you scale up immediately. Instead of one community center, you could be working on 50 projects at once. Instead of serving hundreds of families, you could impact thousands. And in return, we handle all the business side. Financing, marketing, client relations, you just focus on the engineering. It's a win-win. I looked around the trailer at Marcus, Sophia, and James. They were watching me carefully, trusting me to make the right decision for all of us. Then I looked back at Michael. How is everyone? I asked quietly. His face softened. Mom asks about you every day. She keeps newspaper clippings about your projects in a scrapbook. Dad won't admit it, but he does the same thing. He's got a whole file in his desk drawer. Tommy got married last year. You have a nephew, Emma. His name is Anthony, and he looks just like you did at that age. The words hit me harder than I expected. I'd missed so much. Weddings, birthdays, the birth of my first nephew. The success I'd built felt suddenly hollow knowing my family had been living their lives without me in them. Marco's got his own crew now, Michael continued. He's good at what he does, but he's not you. None of us are you. We're builders, Emma, but we're not innovators. We're not visionaries. That was always your gift. I need time to think, I told Morrison. Of course, but don't take too long. Opportunities like this don't come around often. After they left, I sat alone in the trailer as the sun set over Portland. Through the windows, I could see the skeleton of our community center rising against the sky. In a few months, it would be finished, and hundreds of people would have a place to gather, learn, and build their own dreams. My phone rang. Mrs. Henderson's number appeared on the screen. How did you know I needed to hear your voice right now? I asked when I picked up. She laughed, the sound warm and familiar. 68 years on this planet teaches you a few things about timing. How are you doing, sweetheart? I told her about Michael's visit, about Morrison's offer, about the nephew I'd never met. She listened without interrupting, the way she always had. You know what I think? She said finally. I think you're asking yourself the wrong question. What do you mean? You're asking whether you should take the money and scale up, or whether you should forgive your family. But the real question is, what would 14-year-old Emma want you to do? That night, I walked through downtown Portland, thinking about Mrs. Henderson's words. The city was alive around me. Young professionals heading to dinner, artists setting up for evening shows, families with children laughing as they window shopped. All of them living in buildings that someone had designed and constructed. All of them part of communities that someone had helped create. When I got back to my hotel, I found Marcus, Sophia, and James waiting in the lobby with takeout from our favorite Thai place. We figured you might need some company tonight, Sophia said. As we ate, they told me their thoughts about Morrison's offer. Marcus worried about losing creative control. Sophia was concerned about being able to maintain our community-focused approach at a larger scale. James saw the potential for greater impact but understood the risks. Whatever you decide, James said, we're with you. This team works because we trust each other. I looked at these three people who'd become like family to me. We'd built something special together. Not just a company, but a shared vision for making the world a little better through the work we did. The next morning, I called Morrison and declined his offer. Then I called Michael. I can't partner with Morrison, I told him, but I have a different proposal. 2 weeks later, I drove back to my hometown for the first time in 11 years. The landscape looked smaller than I remembered, but the mountains still rose majestically in the distance. I pulled into the parking lot of Castellano Construction and sat in my car for a few minutes, gathering my courage. The office looked exactly the same. Same faded linoleum, same coffee-stained desks, same bulletin board covered with safety notices and project photos. But Dad looked older, the lines around his eyes deeper. When he saw me walk in, he froze completely. Hello, Dad? For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he cleared his throat and gestured to his office. Come on, let's talk. We sat across from his desk, the same desk where I'd done homework as a little girl while he worked late. The walls were covered with photos of completed projects, awards from the Builders Association, and newspaper clippings. In the corner of his bulletin board, partly hidden behind a safety manual, I could see the edge of an article about green build solutions. You look good, he said finally. Successful. I am successful, but I didn't come here to gloat. He nodded slowly. Michael said you had a proposal. I pulled out a folder containing the business plan I'd spent 2 weeks preparing. Castellano Green Construction, I said, sliding it across the desk. A partnership between our companies. You handle traditional construction, foundations, structural work, all the things you do best. We handle sustainable design, green certifications, environmental compliance. Dad opened the folder and studied the projections I'd prepared. His eyebrows went up as he saw the potential revenue numbers. You'd be willing to work with us after you threw me out for following my dreams? I finished. I'll be honest, Dad. It took me a long time to forgive you, but I've realized something. We both want the same thing. We want to build things that last, that serve communities, that make people's lives better. better. We just have different ideas about how to do it. He was quiet for a long time, reading through my proposal. When he finally looked up, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. I made a mistake, he said quietly. I was scared of losing you to something I didn't understand. I thought if I held on tight enough, I could keep my family together. Instead, I pushed away the daughter who could have helped us build something even better. The apology I dreamed of hearing for 11 years didn't bring the satisfaction I'd expected. Instead, I just felt tired and sad for all the time we'd lost. We can't change the past, I said, but we can build a better future. What would this partnership look like? He asked, his voice stronger now. I opened my laptop and pulled up the presentation I'd prepared. Joint projects where we combine traditional construction expertise with cutting-edge sustainable technology. Your crews handle the heavy lifting, my team handles the environmental systems. We bid on projects together, share resources, split profits based on contribution. And your brothers would be partners too if they want. Michael could head up project management for the joint ventures. Tommy could oversee equipment and machinery. Marco could handle business development and client relations. Dad leaned back in his chair studying me. You've thought this through. I've had 11 years to think it through. He was quiet for another long moment. Then, what made you come back? You could have any partner you wanted. Why us? I thought about how to answer that. Because family isn't just about blood, I said finally. It's about shared values, shared goals. Despite everything that happened, we're still builders. We still want to create things that matter. And you think we can work together after all this time? I think we can try, but it has to be different this time, Dad. I'm not 14 anymore. I'm not asking for permission to follow my dreams. I'm offering to share them. He nodded slowly. What would you need from me? Respect for my expertise, trust in my judgment, and acknowledgement that there's more than one way to build a legacy. And what would I get in return? A daughter who's willing to come home, a partner who can help your business grow in ways you never imagined, and grandchildren who might actually want to follow in their grandfather's footsteps someday. The last part surprised even me. I hadn't really thought about having children, about passing on the family tradition, but sitting there in his office, looking at the photos of 4 generations of Castellano builders, I realized that maybe I did want to be part of that legacy after all. Dad was quiet for a long time. Then he reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a thick folder. Inside were newspaper clippings, magazine articles, printouts of online stories, every piece of media coverage about my company and my work that he could find. I kept track, he said simply. I was proud of you, even when I was too stubborn to admit it. The folder was thick with years of collected articles. Emma Castellano wins Engineering Innovation Award. Young entrepreneur revolutionizes green building. From disowned daughter to industry leader. Mom has twice as many, he said with a slight smile. She's got a whole scrapbook. Can I see her? I asked. She's at the house. She's been cooking all morning just in case. The drive to my childhood home felt surreal. Everything looked the same but smaller, like I'd grown and the world had shrunk. When we pulled into the driveway, I could see Mom through the kitchen window, bustling around with the focused energy she'd always brought to family meals. She came out to meet us before we even reached the front door. For a moment, we just stood there looking at each other. Then she pulled me into a hug that felt like coming home and falling apart at the same time. My beautiful girl, she whispered into my hair. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. We cried together on the front porch for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. When we finally went inside, the house smelled like Sunday dinner, pot roast and garlic bread, and all the foods that had meant family to me once upon a time. Tommy and Marco arrived within the hour, both nervous and excited, and unsure how to act around the sister they'd lost 11 years ago. But when I met my nephew Anthony, a 6-year-old with my dark hair and Dad's stubborn chin, the awkwardness melted away. He didn't know about our family drama or the years of separation. He just knew he had an aunt who built cool buildings and who listened when he told her about his Lego creations. Can you teach me to build real buildings? He asked, showing me his latest architectural masterpiece, a castle made entirely of blocks. Someday, I promised, when you're older. How old? I looked at Dad, who was watching our interaction with something like wonder on his face. How old were you when Grandpa first took you to a construction site? I asked. 7, Dad said. Maybe 8. Then when you're 7 or 8, I told Anthony. If you still want to learn? That evening, as we sat around the dinner table for the first time in 11 years, I felt something I hadn't realized I'd lost. The sense of belonging to something bigger than myself. The conversation flowed easier than I'd expected, helped along by Anthony's constant chatter and my brother's genuine curiosity about my work. So this concrete you invented, Tommy said, passing the salad bowl, it actually pulls carbon out of the air? Not invented, I corrected. Developed. And yes, it absorbs CO2 as it cures. The more carbon heavy the environment, the stronger it gets. That's incredible, Marco said. Do you have any idea what that could mean for urban construction? I found myself explaining the chemistry, the environmental benefits, the potential applications. My family listened with genuine interest, asking smart questions that showed they understood not just the technical aspects, but the broader implications. We could use this on every project, Michael said thoughtfully. Market it as carbon-negative construction. That would put us ahead of every other firm in the region. That's the idea behind the partnership, I said. Your expertise in traditional construction combined with my innovations in sustainable technology. Dad had been quiet through most of the conversation, but now he spoke up. What would you call it? This partnership? I'd been thinking about that. Castellano Green Construction, honoring the past while building the future. He smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him since I walked into his office that morning. I like it. The partnership launched 6 months later, after lawyers and accountants had worked out all the details. Our first joint project was affordable housing for veterans. Traditional construction methods enhanced with sustainable technologies and energy-efficient design. Dad and my brothers handled the structural work while my team focused on environmental systems and long-term sustainability. It wasn't easy at first. Decades of hurt don't heal overnight, and we had to learn how to work together as adults rather than the parent and child we'd been when everything fell apart. There were arguments about methods, disagreements about priorities, moments when the old tensions flared up and threatened to derail everything we were trying to build. But slowly, project by project, we found our rhythm. Dad learned to trust my judgment on technical matters. I learned to value his experience and intuition about construction challenges. My brothers discovered that sustainable building wasn't just environmental activism, it was good business that attracted clients and increased profit margins. The breakthrough project came 8 months into the partnership. The city of Seattle was looking for a firm to build a new elementary school that would serve as a model for energy-efficient public education buildings. The project was massive, a complete campus that needed to accommodate 800 students while meeting the strictest environmental standards ever required by the city. We were competing against firms with decades of experience and resources we couldn't match, but we had something unique, a family business that had been building for 4 generations, enhanced with cutting-edge sustainable technology that no one else could offer. I stood in front of the city planning committee with Dad by my side, presenting our proposal for the greenest school building ever constructed in Washington state. As I clicked through slides showing our innovative designs and carbon-negative concrete applications, I realized this was the moment I'd been building toward my entire life. This building won't just house students, I told the committee. It will teach them. Every solar panel, every recycled material, every system that reduces environmental impact will be a lesson in responsibility and innovation. We're not just constructing a school. We're creating a learning environment that shows children what's possible when we commit to building a better future. When the presentation ended, the room was silent. Then the committee chairwoman smiled. Ms. Castellano, Mr. Castellano, we're excited to move forward with your proposal. We got the contract, and with it, the largest project either of our companies had ever undertaken. The Seattle Elementary School project put Castellano Green Construction on the map as a major player in sustainable construction. Architecture magazines featured our work. Environmental groups praised our innovations. Business journals wrote about our unique family partnership model. But more than the professional success, I was proud of how the partnership had transformed my family. Dad had become a passionate advocate for green building practices, often surprising clients with his knowledge of sustainable materials and energy-efficient design. My brothers had embraced new technologies and training programs. Most importantly, we'd learned to value different kinds of intelligence and contribution. The school project took 2 years to complete. The day we held the ribbon-cutting ceremony, I stood watching children run through hallways lit by solar power and heated by geothermal systems, and felt the deep satisfaction that comes from building something that will matter for generations. Mrs. Henderson flew out from the East Coast for the ceremony. She was 79 now, moving a little slower, but still sharp as ever. As we watched the celebration together, she squeezed my hand. Your 14-year-old self would be proud, she said. I hope so. I think about her sometimes. That scared girl sitting at the kitchen table with her acceptance letters. I wonder what she'd think of all this. I think she'd be amazed that her wildest dreams turned out to be just the beginning. 3 years into the partnership, Castellano Green had become one of the most respected sustainable construction firms on the West Coast. We'd built homes for thousands of families, created community spaces in dozens of neighborhoods, and helped establish new standards for environmentally responsible construction. But the project I was most proud of was still taking shape. A revolution in how we thought about family, legacy, and the buildings we leave behind. Anthony was 9 now and completely obsessed with construction. He spent weekends at job sites, wore a tiny hard hat that Dad had special ordered for him, and could identify different types of cranes from a mile away. But unlike previous generations of Castellano children, he was learning about solar panels alongside traditional framing, about sustainable materials as well as structural engineering. Aunt Emma, he said one Saturday as we walked through the framework of our latest project, when I grow up, can I invent new kinds of buildings too? You can invent anything you want, I told him. That's what dreams are for. The partnership had grown beyond anything I'd originally envisioned. We now had 3 offices, 42 employees, and projects in 5 states. My sustainable concrete formula had been licensed to manufacturers across the country. The Castellano Green model was being studied by business schools as an example of successful family enterprise evolution. But success brought new challenges. Competitors were trying to poach our employees with better offers. Larger firms wanted to acquire us. Government regulators were proposing new standards that could affect our advantage in sustainable construction. The biggest challenge came from an unexpected source, my own team. Marcus, Sophia, and James had been with me since the beginning, but as the company grew, their roles had evolved in ways that didn't always satisfy them. I feel like we're losing what made us special, Sophia said during a team meeting in our Portland office. We used to be about community impact, about projects that really mattered. Now half our work is luxury developments for wealthy clients. She wasn't wrong. The partnership with my family had opened doors to larger, more profitable projects. But somewhere along the way, we'd started accepting work that paid well, rather than work that aligned with our original mission. What would you want to do differently? I asked. Remember why we started this, Marcus said. Community centers, affordable housing, schools, projects that serve people who really need them. James nodded. The money is good, but the satisfaction isn't there anymore. That conversation led to a complete reevaluation of our business model. We decided to split our work. 50% high-paying commercial projects that funded our operations. 50% community-focused projects that fulfilled our mission. It meant lower profits in the short term, but higher satisfaction for everyone involved. The new model led to our most meaningful project yet, rebuilding the elementary school in my old neighborhood after it was damaged in a severe storm. The building had been constructed in the 1960s with outdated systems and poor insulation. Rather than just repair the damage, the school district wanted to create a completely new facility that would serve the community for the next 50 years. Standing in the ruins of my old school, surrounded by my family and my chosen family, I realized how far we'd all come. This was the building where I'd first learned I loved science, where teachers had encouraged my questions and curiosity. Now we were going to rebuild it with technology that didn't exist when I was a student there. It's like coming full circle, Dad said, studying the architectural plans we'd spread across a folding table in what used to be the gymnasium. Not a circle, I corrected. A spiral. We're covering the same ground, but at a higher level. The school project became our flagship demonstration of what was possible when innovation met tradition. We incorporated every sustainable technology we developed, from carbon-negative concrete to advanced solar systems to rainwater collection that would teach students about conservation. But we also honored the craftsmanship values Dad had instilled in our family. Solid foundations, attention to detail, construction that would last for generations. celebrations. The day we broke ground, the whole neighborhood came out to watch. Mrs. Rodriguez from across the street, who remembered me as a little girl, brought homemade cookies for the construction crew. Mr. Chen, now retired, told anyone who would listen about how he'd watched me grow up and always knew I was destined for great things. I remember when you used to sit on your front porch reading engineering books, he said, shaking my hand. Your father thought you were wasting your time. I told my wife, that girl is going to change the world someday. As construction progressed, something unexpected happened. Other contractors started visiting our job site, not as competitors, but as students. They wanted to understand our techniques, learn about our materials, see how we integrated sustainable systems without compromising structural integrity. Dad started giving informal tours, explaining our methods to anyone interested in learning. Watching him share knowledge about green building practices, the same man who had once dismissed my environmental concerns as impractical, felt like the final piece of our reconciliation falling into place. You know, he said one afternoon as we watched Tommy demonstrate our new concrete mixing process to a group of visiting engineers, I was wrong about more than just college. I was wrong about change. I thought innovation meant abandoning everything we'd built. You showed me it could mean building something better. The school opened 2 years later to national attention. Architecture critics called it a masterpiece of sustainable design. Education experts praised its innovative learning environments. Environmental groups held it up as proof that green building could be both practical and beautiful. But the recognition that meant the most came from an unexpected source. A letter arrived at our office 3 weeks after the school's grand opening, handwritten on lined notebook paper. Dear Ms. Castellano, my name is Sofia Martinez and I am 13 years old. I go to the new school you built and I wanted to thank you. My science teacher told us about how you invented the concrete that helps fight climate change and how you came from our neighborhood and followed your dreams even when it was hard. I want to be an engineer too, but my parents think I should focus on more practical things. Reading about your story made me realize that sometimes you have to fight for your dreams. Thank you for showing me what's possible. P.S. The solar panels on our roof are really cool and I love how the building stays warm without using too much energy. I read that letter 3 times, then called an emergency meeting with my team. We need to do more, I announced. Building sustainable structures isn't enough. We need to be building sustainable dreams. That conversation led to the creation of the Castellano Green Foundation, focused on STEM education and mentorship for young people from backgrounds like mine. We started offering internships, scholarships, and mentorship programs for students who wanted to pursue careers in engineering and sustainable design. Sofia Martinez became our first official mentee. Every month, she'd spend a Saturday at one of our job sites, wearing her own small hard hat and asking the kind of insightful questions that reminded me of myself at her age. Watching her eyes light up when she understood a new concept, seeing her confidence grow as she learned to read blueprints and understand structural systems, felt like the most important work I'd ever done. Does your family support your dreams now? I asked her one day as we reviewed plans for a new community center. My parents are starting to understand, she said. It helps that you're from our neighborhood. They can see that engineering isn't just for rich kids or people from other places. If you could do it, maybe I can too. The foundation grew rapidly. Within 2 years, we had 30 active mentees, partnerships with 6 schools, and a scholarship program that had sent 12 students to engineering programs at top universities. Each success felt like a small victory against the voices that told young people their dreams were impractical or impossible. But success also brought scrutiny. An investigative journalist named David Park started looking into our company's rapid growth and community connections. At first, I assumed it was routine business reporting. Then he called and asked to interview me about allegations of preferential treatment in city contracting. Apparently, some of our competitors were claiming that our family connections and community ties gave us unfair advantages in bidding for public projects. They suggested that our success was due to politics rather than innovation. The accusations stung, partly because there was a tiny grain of truth to them. We did have relationships that helped us understand community needs better than outside firms. Local officials did trust us more because they'd watched our work firsthand. But we'd earned that trust through consistent delivery of quality projects on time and under budget. Let them investigate, Dad said when I told him about the journalist's questions. We've got nothing to hide. Every contract we've won because we submitted the best proposal. The investigation took 3 months. David Park interviewed city officials, reviewed our contract bids, and examined our financial records. He spoke with competitors who claimed we had unfair advantages, and community members who praised our work. When his article finally ran, the headline read, "How one family business became a model for ethical growth in construction." The investigation had revealed not corruption, but a company that had succeeded by genuinely serving its community while maintaining the highest standards of quality and innovation. Castellano Green Construction represents something rare in modern business, Park wrote. A company that has grown rapidly while maintaining its values, that has embraced innovation while honoring tradition, and that has achieved financial success while never losing sight of its mission to serve the community that supported its growth. The positive coverage led to more opportunities than we could handle. Cities across the country wanted to hire us for major projects. Universities invited me to speak about sustainable construction and family business management. The Discovery Channel asked to film a documentary about our concrete innovation and its environmental impact. But with success came difficult decisions. We were offered a contract to build a luxury resort in Hawaii that would have been our largest project ever and generated more profit than our previous 5 projects combined. The resort developers specifically wanted our sustainable building techniques to market their property as environmentally responsible. The team was split. James argued that the profit would fund our community work for years. Sophia worried that taking luxury projects would compromise our mission. Marcus was concerned about the environmental impact of tourism development, even with sustainable building practices. What do you think? I asked Dad during one of our weekly planning meetings. He was quiet for a long time, studying the resort proposal. 20 years ago, I would have taken this job without hesitation, he said finally. The money is good, the technical challenge is interesting, and it would establish us as a major player nationally. But you didn't build this company to make rich people richer. You built it to make the world better. Sometimes those things things align, and sometimes they don't. I looked around the conference room at the people who had become my family, my biological family who had learned to value my dreams, and my chosen family who had helped me build those dreams into reality. Everyone was watching me, waiting for a decision that would shape the future of everything we'd created together. We pass on the resort, I said finally, but we propose an alternative. Instead of the luxury resort, I drafted a proposal for a sustainable housing development on the same Hawaiian land. The project would provide affordable homes for local families, while demonstrating that sustainable construction could be both environmentally responsible and economically viable in island environments. The developers weren't interested in my alternative, but our proposal caught the attention of a nonprofit focused on affordable housing in Hawaii. 6 months later, we were working on our first international project, a community of 50 sustainable homes designed specifically for families who had been priced out of traditional housing markets. The Hawaii project became a model that was replicated in coastal communities across the Pacific. More importantly, it reinforced our commitment to using our success to create opportunities for others, rather than just accumulating wealth. As I approached my 30th birthday, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me from that rain-soaked night at 14 to this moment. Mrs. Henderson, now 82, flew out for my birthday celebration, which we held at the community center where our partnership had begun. The party was a mixture of family, friends, colleagues, and mentees. Anthony, now 12 and taller than me, gave a speech about how his aunt had taught him that buildings could help save the planet. Sophia Martinez, now 16 and heading to MIT on a Castellano Green Foundation scholarship, talked about how mentorship had changed her life. But the moment that moved me most came when Dad stood up to speak. 30 years ago, I thought I knew what success looked like, he said, his voice carrying clearly across the room full of people whose lives had been touched by our work. I thought it meant building a business that would last, creating jobs for my children, establishing something permanent in a changing world. He paused, looking directly at me. I was right about wanting to build something permanent. I was wrong about what that something should be. Emma didn't just build a business. She built a bridge between what we were and what we could become. She showed me that honoring the past doesn't mean being trapped by it. The applause was warm and sustained, but what mattered most to me was the pride in Dad's eyes. Not just pride in my accomplishments, but pride in the relationship we'd rebuilt, the family we'd healed, the future we were creating together. Later that evening, as the party wound down and guests began to leave, I found myself standing outside the community center with Mrs. Henderson. The building rose against the star-filled sky, its solar panels gleaming in the moonlight, a testament to what was possible when innovation and tradition worked together. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd made different choices? She asked. I considered the question. What if I'd given up on college and joined the family business at 18? What if I'd taken Morrison's buyout offer? What if I'd never reached out to rebuild the relationship with my family? Sometimes, I admitted, but I think every choice led me exactly where I needed to be, even the painful ones. She smiled and patted my arm. That's wisdom talking. The girl who cried on her front porch all those years ago has become quite a woman. The following year brought new challenges and opportunities. The Castellano Green Foundation launched its first summer engineering camp for middle school students from underserved communities. We opened a training center where experienced construction workers could learn sustainable building techniques. Our concrete formula was adopted as a standard material by 3 major manufacturers, generating licensing revenue that funded our community programs. But the achievement I was most proud of came when Anthony, now 13, announced at Sunday dinner that he wanted to study environmental engineering in college. I want to invent new ways to build houses that help the environment, he said with the confidence that comes from growing up in a family that values both dreams and practical skills. Maybe I can figure out how to make buildings that actually clean the air while people live in them. Dad beamed with pride, and I realized that we'd successfully passed the torch to a new generation, one that would never have to choose between family loyalty and personal dreams, because we'd shown them how to honor both. The conversation at dinner that night turned to the future of the company, the next generation of innovations we wanted to pursue, the legacy we hoped to leave. But underneath all the business planning was something deeper, the knowledge that we'd healed something that had been broken, that we'd built something that would last, not just because it was constructed well, but because it was founded on love, respect, and the courage to grow. As I drove home that night, past the community center where our partnership had begun, past the school where my environmental consciousness had first awakened, past the house where I'd once sat with my acceptance letters and dreamed of a different future, I thought about how much had changed and how much had stayed the same. I was still the girl who believed in the power of innovation to solve problems. I was still passionate about sustainable construction and environmental responsibility. I was still driven to create things that would make the world better. But now I wasn't alone in those beliefs. I was part of a family, both biological and chosen, that shared my vision and supported my dreams. I was building not just structures but relationships, not just a business but a legacy, not just a career but a community. The 14-year-old girl who had chosen college over family expectations could never have imagined this future. She thought she was choosing between her dreams and her family, not understanding that the real choice was between giving up and finding a way to honor both. Looking back now, I understand that the most important lesson wasn't about concrete formulations or sustainable design or business partnerships. It was about the difference between compromise and growth, between abandoning your values and expanding them to include others. The rain started to fall as I pulled into my driveway, just like it had that night 16 years ago when everything changed. But this time, the rain felt like a blessing instead of a storm, washing the world clean and preparing it for whatever would grow next. Today, Castellano Green Construction continues to expand, building sustainable communities across North America and beyond. Our foundation has sent over 100 students to engineering programs at top universities. Mrs. Henderson, now 85, serves as our board chairwoman emeritus and still offers the wisest counsel in any meeting. Anthony talks about developing new materials that could revolutionize green construction, and my parents beam with pride when he shows them his latest invention drawings. The cycle of dreams continues, but this time with support instead of opposition, with encouragement instead of resistance. Sometimes young people reach out to me through our company website or social media, sharing their own stories of family conflict over career choices. I try to respond to each one personally, remembering how desperately I needed someone to tell me that following your dreams doesn't make you selfish, it makes you brave. The message I share with them is simple. Your dreams matter, your family can learn to understand them, and sometimes the greatest gift you can give the people you love is the courage to show them what's possible when you refuse to give up on yourself. The community center where I celebrated my 30th birthday now hosts after-school programs, job training workshops, and community meetings. Children play in its courtyards, seniors gather in its common areas, and families create memories in its spaces. It stands as proof that when you build with both skill and heart, you create something that lasts. And late at night, when I drive past it on my way home from long days at the office, I sometimes think of that rain-soaked 14-year-old girl with her college acceptance letters, and I whisper to her across the years, "You did it. You kept faith with your dreams, and look what we built together." The story isn't over. Anthony is applying to colleges now, Sophia Martinez is thriving at MIT, and dozens of other young people are following their dreams with the support and encouragement that I had to find for myself. The foundation continues to grow, the company continues to innovate, and the family continues to heal and strengthen with each passing year. But on quiet evenings, when I sit in my home office reviewing plans for our next project, I sometimes pull out that old compass Mrs. Henderson gave me all those years ago. It still points true north, still reminds me that as long as you know which direction you're headed, you'll never really be lost. The direction I chose that night 16 years ago led me through pain and loneliness, through struggle and triumph, through loss and reconciliation. It led me home, not to the place I left, but to the place I helped create. A home where dreams are valued alongside tradition, where innovation honors the past while building the future, where families can grow and change without breaking apart. That's the real construction project of my life. Not the buildings I've designed or the companies I've built, but the bridges I've created between who I was and who I became, between my family's values and my own dreams, between the girl who was abandoned for wanting more, and the woman who learned that having more means sharing more. The rain has stopped now, and tomorrow there will be new projects to plan, new students to mentor, new problems to solve. But tonight, I'm content to sit with my compass and my memories, grateful for every choice that led me here, every person who helped me along the way, and every dream that refused to die even when the world seemed determined to kill it. Because in the end, that's what this story is really about. The refusal to let anyone else define the limits of what's possible, the courage to build something new while honoring something old, and the faith that love can survive even the deepest wounds if we're willing to do the hard work of healing. The girl who sat at that kitchen table with her acceptance letters grew up to build more than she ever dreamed possible. But the most important thing she built wasn't made of concrete or steel or even sustainable materials. It was made of forgiveness and understanding, of dreams shared and bridges built, of the unshakable belief that families, like buildings, can be renovated without losing their foundation. And that, more than any award or recognition or business success, is the legacy I'm most proud to leave behind.